with writing. And the idea of this presentation is that we can actually make writing more enjoyable if we know exactly what we are doing. We can actually make it more engaging. That is, you can do write whole sections in one sitting instead of struggling to put the words that you need on paper, right? So we'll do the basics of academic writing and then differentiating between leisurely writing and academic writing, and then the structure and content, where we'll then do a little bit on the literature review part that you have as an assignment, and then some of the modern tools that you can use to help you make your writing easy. So the general structure for you in academia, to write anything in academia, will be this structure. The abstract comes first, the introduction, you do a literature review, the approach or methodology you used in your research work, the results from your work, the discussion, and then your conclusions and recommendations. And for each of these components, I'll try to explain them so that you get the structure. It doesn't matter what you are given to write. It will either be a compressed form of this structure, or it will be a much more expanded form. But in each case, so far as you are writing something in academia, we expect that the structure will be this way. All right. So starting from the abstract. The abstract is the summary. That's like after I've written everything, what would I use to sell the document that I've written? So the abstract gives you a summary of everything that you've done. And usually to contain, let's say, um a line that tells you about the importance of your work, a line that tells you about the objective, a line that talks about the methodology, a line or two, um, your main results in a line or two, and then your conclusions in one line. Very simple for an abstract. So usually, if you are going to do any effective writing, that will probably come as the last thing you will do, right? So the next thing then is the introduction. Now, the introduction of any academic writing is kind of like um, where you establish why you are even doing the work in the first place. So um, it gives you anybody who is reading an idea of why should I continue reading this work, and there you are looking at, let's say, one the first paragraph is talking about the importance of even the research that you are doing, the specific topic that you are doing. What is this importance in the research area in terms of science? You should be able to establish that. If I'm writing about archaeogeophysics in slavery, for instance, I can either start with talking about how important the study of slavery or the transatlantic slave trade is. If I'm doing groundwater and I'm using, let's say, resistivity, and I'm writing a document on that, my first paragraph of the introduction should be telling everybody what is the importance of groundwater studies, or what's the importance of water to everybody. So that's how the introduction should be structured. A second paragraph may do a little bit of literature review. If it's a compressed form, sort of like a paper or an article, yes, then you could do that. If it's your thesis, then you could have more time to delve into the background of the work as well, right? The literature review section. So this structure will change a bit. If it's just a research article for a paper or a journal, then the literature review can be embedded in the introduction. But if it's your thesis, for instance, we expect that you do a full chapter on literature review. Okay, and this will contain now the literature that you've read to prepare you for the work. And I'm going to take some time to go through that, because I think most people just assume that the literature review is just writing that Amma did this, Kofi did that, Amma did that, this guy did that. No, that's not what a literature review is. A literature review is literally supposed to tell you what is the state of the field. So what do you mean by the state of the field? What are the methods being used? What is the importance of the research you are doing based on what other people have done in the past? What is the method everybody has used to do his work? For those methods, what are the results they got? What are the conclusions they got from their results? If I put all those together, what are the prevailing ideas in the field, right? Is it, for instance, if it's some theoretical work about seismic inversion, the question is what methods are they using for seismic inversion right now? Are they using some optimization algorithms, or are they using machine learning algorithm, which is the new thing now, or something like that. They should be able to tell us if after reading all these papers, all the information you've gleaned from that. And that is what a proper literature review is. So the review should not just be a compilation of Amma did this, Kofi did that, and that kind of thing, right? Okay. So if for instance your assignment you begin is a review of a particular field, then you should be able to look at what was the importance, all the papers that you've read, what is the importance of that field, what are the methodologies deployed in that field, what are the main results you've gotten from the papers that you've read, what are the conclusions and their recommendations, and then you tell us from everything that you've read, what are the concepts that dominate the field. Probably there'll be a main concept that talks about the thing in one way. There will be other concepts that treat it in an alternative way. You should be able to summarize all that. Then the last thing you should tell us is probably what is the limitations of each of the methodologies and the concept that you are talking about. Of course, if you are doing proper research like you guys are about to do with your masters, then again you should be able to you should take your ideas for new work that you should do from the limitations and disadvantages you've seen, the challenges you've seen, because that will then tell you what is the gap that is still there that nobody has filled. So you can then fill that gap, right? And then the next part is the approach and methodology, which is now specific to your paper, because now you've done your literature review. You've determined that this is the methodology you use because after studying all the other methodologies, you think this is the most viable way for your work based on your data, your location, and everything. So you can now write about that. Your results. The results are like you saying these are the unadulterated results that I've gotten. These are my observations, and this you have no room to even garnish it or add your own voice. The point is that this is what I've observed. So usually in the results that you are supporting this with charts, with graphs, with images that people can also see and say, oh yes, what he's saying is true. This is what he saw there. So for results, if let's say 4 or 5 of us do this literally the same work and we get our results, we should be observing the same things. Now the discussion is a different matter though. The discussion is where usually you are bringing in your own views, your own ideas. So after you've observed all the things and put them in the results, the question is that from all those results, what does it mean? And that is what comes in the discussion. So your discussion session is going to talk about, I've observed this. This is what I think it means. And this is what I think it means in the context of the literature review that I've done. So even though I've seen this result, this is the meaning for it. This is why I've seen this result. And then even after I've seen it, I've told you why I've seen it. It compares with other places, other people who have done similar work and they've seen this. Or it doesn't compare. Other papers that I've seen do not agree with me at all. But I still think my result is the best because of this. So your discussion is the place where you show your uniqueness as a scientist. That is where we hear your brain working. We see what your brain is thinking throughout. Most of the other parts of the work you are doing, it's not about you. It's about just maybe repeating the methodology, putting it at the right place. Literature review is other people's work. Introduction, establishing the field, it's not really you. But this discussion is where we see and hear you, the person writing, right? That's where we see that. Then, yes, then the next part is the conclusions and recommendations. So for the conclusions, what you are actually going to be doing is that from the results and from the discussions, what are the main 1, 2, 3 points that you think capture the work, the essence of the work that you have done? All right. They should capture the essence. Like I can see, I can do any research and get 4, 5, even 10 observations from my results. But overall, what do I think are the main things that my results cover, or my research really covers? And that's what comes in the main conclusions. So your main conclusion, maybe 4 main conclusions, that's it. The rest should be in there because of course if you target your research very well, you've done your objectives very well, then your conclusions will not be more than 4 uh, uh, there. And then your recommendations will be, well, okay, maybe further work should be done. But you see, again, one of the things students will do then, for most of you, you would just say, oh, I recommend that further work should be done. That is a no-no. what kind of work do you want to be done? If you've really done your literature review well, you've observed your results, you've done the discussion, you can tell us some of the limitations of your work. So you think that somebody else can actually go and do that work. For instance, if I want to do groundwater studies on KNUST campus using maybe resistivity, and I've covered some parts because I can't do every part. The question is that do I want more research to be done and cover parts that I thought would probably be viable, but I wasn't able to cover because of limitation? Or I was not able to invert my data well, so I think other methodologies to be used to invert the resistivity data well? Or do I think we should integrate new methodologies into the space which will help in improving the results? So that is what should be in the recommendations, not just saying that further work should be done. Right. So that covers generally what should be in the structure for writing any academic document. Any questions as at this time? I know I'm rushing, but I do have some other engagements. So, but if you have any questions, you can ask. Good. So if you don't have any questions, then we go on to, so there are some differences between what we call academic writing and what we call general writing. So if you are writing anything now as a graduate student, I don't expect to see informal, semi-formal language. It should all be formal language and should be objective, concise. Some of you, I'm sure, will start realizing now, because they say that academic writing, maybe they've given an assignment and you're supposed to write 4 or 5 pages, or you decided that you want to write 4 or 5 pages. The next thing you do is that then you start garnishing your work with frivolous words. So, or you write the same thing and then say Kofi is going to school. Then you write, oh, but Kofi was walking to school. And then Kofi took his time to go to school. All those three sentences are saying the same thing, right? That is a no-no. So you have to be very concise in your any write-up that you do for academic writing. Because see, if you do proper research, you would even find that the work that you are writing, you don't have enough space. For instance, if you are writing a paper, even if you are writing a thesis, you will see that even though they say maybe your work should be up to 100 pages, your work is more than 100 pages, and now you need to be cutting things out. It is only when your research is not really thorough and you didn't do a proper literature review, for instance, because you don't really know the field and where your work fits in and the methodologies, you now need to look for words. All right. So it should be objective, it should be concise. You cannot use slang in any formal academic writing. So you cannot be using some informal English or slang that we only use in friendly banter. Um, of course, yes. Unless, for instance, galamsey is a slang that is common to Ghana. But now, if I want to introduce, because I'm writing, my research work is on galamsey, and I want to introduce that into the academic field, then I have to put at the beginning of my work, I have to define that galamsey means illegal gold mining in Ghana. Then once I put that there, now when I'm putting galamsey, I can put it in quotation marks and define. Now, when I talk about galamsey in that particular piece of writing, everybody knows what it is referring to because it's not formal English, right? So first, if you are going to introduce slang because it is important for what you are saying, then you should first define it so that whoever is reading, your audience that is reading, knows that this is what you are talking about. You can also not use contractions. So from now on, for instance, if any of the lecturers or supervisors ask you to write anything, I do not expect to see don't and can't and any or I will or we will or that kind of thing. You can't have contractions in academic writing. Write them out in full. All right. And then the other thing is that you always need to have referencing. So now you are graduate students, you cannot write anything academia without referencing. And I usually post this meme where I say that even if you are going to in academia, you know that the bread you like is maybe wheat bread. For you to say that I like wheat bread, you need to go and find a paper from 20 years ago that says that wheat bread is good. Even though we all know wheat bread is good, you need to go back and look for a paper that says wheat bread is good, right? And then just those papers will then justify why wheat bread is good. You can't just say something in academia without proof, right? And those are what citations are. So you can't just say it. You need to find proof from other journals, from other papers, from other articles, from other theses that say that this is the conclusion. Yes. So you always have to reference everything you say, uh, unless it's now from your resolve. All right. Good. So that covers the academic writing versus general writing. Any questions there?
Doc,
Yes, go for it.
hello, Doc.
Yeah, go for it.
Please, with regards to the citations, when you want to cite someone in your paper, is it advisable to, can you take exactly what he said in his paper and then put it in yours, or you are supposed to paraphrase it?
So there are two ways of doing that. You can do that by, so quotation marks are allowed. Where that one you lift exactly what is in the somebody's paper and put it in yours. Put them in quotation marks and say that this was said by this person. That is allowed. But you cannot do that often, because what it actually signals to everybody is that you are very lazy, right? The idea behind your referencing, like I'm saying, is that, you see, when let's say a bread example that I'm giving. Okay, somebody else has done studies 10 years ago. He has tested, taking all the different kinds of bread in Ghana, and he's looked at their quality. Or let's say not even that. He's looking at how bread affects, how do you call it? Um, Weight gain. So he's not looking at the best bread. He's just saying that how does bread affect weight gain. Then he studied banana bread, vanilla bread, wheat bread, cassava bread, everything. And then he said, "Oh, I think that wheat bread um, really helps people to lose weight." Great. So he is just saying that wheat bread helps people to lose weight because of this and this and that, because of the content, what is in it, and he says all that blah blah blah. But now I am writing about bread in general and the way bread affects, let's say, socio-economic living in Ghana, right? So it's not directly what he's doing. But in my background or literature review, I want to make a point that even bread is so important, and there are many kinds of bread in Ghana, and of those kinds of bread, wheat bread is the best. Do you understand? Now, when I write that statement, I'm not exactly stating that from him that wheat bread is the best for losing weight. But based on his conclusions that wheat bread is the best for losing weight, I can actually say that in terms of health, wheat bread is the best bread. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yes, please.
So here I'm not going to quote him directly straight to the point that wheat bread is the best for losing weight. But it may be my writer, because it is not directly related to health, but it's about economic living. I can just cite him and say that, but he has made the point that wheat bread is the best bread. Do you get it? I'm still capturing the essence of what he's saying, but I'm not necessarily quoting him directly. And that is actually the essence of references. It's not just saying that um specifically this is what the person said. How does that fit into your work? And how does that lend credence to what you are doing? That is usually how you put in referencing, right? Or you are looking for a methodology you need to exhibit. You know that this person has used this methodology, so I'm citing this methodology in my work. Yes. So you can use quotation marks and pick the direct reference directly. That's okay. Pick everything directly. But that one you can do once or twice in a paper. If you get to twice, everybody assumes that you are too lazy. So it's better to paraphrase and put it in your own words. So in that case, you are even summarizing the whole field. There are 4 or 5 papers that say that using machine learning for seismic inversion is good. So I'll cite all those ones and say yes. These 4 papers have said using this specific machine learning algorithm, maybe neural networks, are effective for seismic. that for novices, maybe you are now, this is the, let's disregard your undergrad thesis, because sometimes I know it is not that effective. But now you are graduate students, writing is an essential part of a scientist. Once you enter graduate school, you are now classified as an early career scientist. So we expect that you are doing proper writing.
Hello, Doc.
So in yes.
I wanted to ask a question, but it appeared I went off a bit.
All right, so go for it.
Yes, with the referencing, is it only written article that you can reference, or you can reference other forms of media?
You can reference almost every other form of media we have. You can even actually reference personal communication, and I have done that. So let's say, um, for instance, when we did the work in Aflao, and we're talking to people who were telling us stories about the slave trade. This is not in any journal. We can't find it in any journal, any paper, any book. But somebody communicated to us personally, communication, that this is relevant. So what you can do is actually cite it as a personal interview. So you can cite that. You can cite a website. You can cite books. You can cite magazine articles. You can cite blogs now. You can cite almost anything. The only thing is that in academic writing, we assume that most at times you should find material somewhere in the past in an academic paper. So would how do you call it? Will give more credence to you citing an academic paper than even a book, because usually textbooks are more general; they are not specific. So if you go and cite a book, let's say for instance, you guys have all started. So I'm sure you've seen Sheriff's book on geophysics, right? I'm sure you guys have all seen that book, or you've not.
Not
No,
yet.
please.
Not really.
Oh, okay. All right. That's like one of the big books in or anyway, either Milton and Gibson or some of those other books. But now that book is like 20 years old, the last edition. Between then, maybe this year alone, people have written lots of papers on even subsets of let's say seismic interpretation. So if I'm doing some work in seismic interpretation, and I want to cite specific methodologies, it will be better to cite a journal article that is fresh than to go look for the book that 20 years ago was released 20 years ago. It won't be current, right? Unless I'm just generally talking about geophysical methodologies and I want to just cite that book as a reference, then that is it, right? So for academic writing, we would place more emphasis on journal articles because we think they are recent. So even when you are writing, we expect that the journal articles you produce should be the journal articles you cite should be current ones. So if you go and cite a 1955 article, unless you can actually show me that since then no work has been done in that area, um, the reviewers and whoever is reading will say no, there must be a problem, because we expect that there will be recent work, and recent work we are talking about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Do you get anything? If you don't do that, then we start thinking, oh, this guy was lazy, he didn't do an effective how do you call it? Literature review. Okay. Then we expect that he didn't do. Yeah. So that's, is your question answered?
That's it. Yes, Doc. Thank you.
All right. So
But
you
say,
check
I
out the
check.
academic
Maybe
face
on
bank,
Monday, you signed the
go
big
there. What it usually
Now,
does,
would be
why
into
I
the
like
silver
it is that,
no.
especially if you're a novice and you're writing, um, as the name suggests.
Prof, I have a question.
Okay, go for it.
Please, how do you explain effective literature review?
So I've mentioned that if you are doing this effective literature review, you should be covering all the bases. So at the beginning, I talked about what literature review means. So there, you should be telling us, you should have gleaned the importance of the work
Say Monday, you never.
from your literature. You should
Right.
have gleaned the methodologies, all the and well, if you say effective literature review, I expect that every single methodology that has ever been used in that particular field, you've seen it, you've read a paper on it. See, you should know all the methodologies that have been used, how effective they've been, the way they've compared their results, what are the limitations of each of those methodologies. If you are, for instance, going to write a thesis, that is how deep you should go. You should go so deep that even if we wake you up, you can talk about your field. You know all the papers that have been published on your research topic. You should be able to tell me the names of the authors off head. That is when you know you've done an effective literature review. Do you get the point I'm making?
Yes.
So you are it's like you are cooked in the field, and you can do that. It's not usually, you see, you do some perfunctory search on Google and then you say, oh, I'm done. So you say that is literature review. That is not. So I'm going to show you some of the tools that can help you to do a deeper dive. But you need to go deeper than that. If you are going to do anything with regards to at a master's level, I'm expecting that you're not doing less than 200 references to 300 references.
Hmm?
Do you understand? If it's a PhD level, I'm expecting you are going 500 to 1,000 references. Do you get the idea? That is how well you should do your literature review. So it is not like, oh, I've just gone to Google and I've found 5 papers. That's it. That if the moment I see 4, 5, 10 papers in you, I know no, then you've not done any proper literature review. You just did some summary reading. That's it. But to understand any field, even if you're going to work in groundwater exploration right now, you should go deep enough to be able to tell us the methodologies, how all the methodologies work, what is the way they assess those methodologies, how have they been quantified, what software have been used, the theory behind them, what is their understanding of how aquifers operate, what kind of aquifers do we like. That's how deep you should go. Then we know that you've done an effective literature review, right? So for most of my students, if you ask any of the other students, by and every the other guys in the team, before they even start the project, they will do what I call the systematic review. A systematic review gives you that opportunity to do a deep dive in the field, because that one you usually don't have the choice how many papers you look at. The way you search in the databases will give you a number of papers, and your job is to go through each and every one of those papers for you to say you've done a good work. And that is the actual way you should do your thesis, so that you don't miss anything in the chain. And the only reason your papers will be overwhelming, which sometimes I get from your side, is that because your topics are too general, you end up getting too many papers and it looks like this is a waste of time. But if your topic is quite specific, you'll probably get about 200 or 300 papers that you can work with and read. Right. Now, I hope that question is answered as well.
Yes, please.
Yes. So let's get back to the academic phrase bank. So what the academic phrase bank will help you with is that once you go there, you will see that introduction. How do you write your introduction? How do you write your first line? How do you write your second line? How do you write your third line? The paragraphs. They've given phrases. The reason they call it a phrase bank is that they're giving phrases to help you do that. So, for instance, if you are writing your first line, the importance of this thing in this field, they've given you some pro forma words that can help you. And it's very helpful. And in graduate school, when you are now learning how to write, just going there and picking those formats, because all academic writing will really be similar. And that's another point I should make. Academic writing is very, 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 how do you call it? Conservative. We are not doing prose, we are not doing novels, we are not doing poetry. So we don't expect things to change. The way, if you take 10 papers, the way they will write their introduction will be almost the same, especially if you're in the same field. Even the people they will cite will be very similar, because it's like scientists are very, very conservative. So they will keep the same set of papers, the same way they all write their introduction, it will be the same. That's why I said it's usually the discussion that you express yourself. But even in the discussion, the structure of that discussion will always be the same. If you go and write a different way, and you send it to a reviewer, for instance, like a journal article, they will get confused because they've never seen anybody write that way. So our creativity is not really, we are not looking at creativity in terms of this style of writing. The structure, the style is the same. So what academic phrase bank does very well for you is that it simplify this structure with pro forma sentences, and all you need to do is to put in your own words to just fit, let's say, the topic you are working on. For instance, if they give you an example like the objective of this study is to find a correlation between X and Y. So depending on your field, what is X and what is Y will be different. The variables will be different, right? But generally, almost every paper you see will have a sentence like that. So that is what is very with academic phrase bank. So take a look at it, play around with it, and if you have any questions, you ask me. Now the workflow for writing, and I've mentioned this a bit, but I'm going to do a quick run again. The workflow for writing, for me personally, is usually starting from the literature review. That is good because if you start from literature review, like I said, it gives you some grounding in the field, right? And it also gives you an idea of how people write in that field. So you are not writing without, how do you call it? Without an understanding of how the field is. So the moment you have a writing project, the first thing you have to do is to do a proper literature review. And I've said if proper, effective, somebody asked a question about that. To do an effective literature review. Once you do that, you should be able to see the structure, the general structure of how things are written in your field. And you can then write like that as well. Then once you are done with the literature review, and I've explained how to do a literature review, the next thing is to do a methodology. The methodology usually is easier because once you've decided that this is the way I'm going to approach the problem, it won't change. The methodology is the place you probably copy more than any other thing in your writing project, because the methodology in science will you can't go and invent a new method unless, of course, if you are even inventing a new method, maybe the pre-processes before that part of your work or after will be the same. You are not going to invent a totally new methodology that has never been seen before. It will be building about somebody else, it will be building upon somebody's work, or adding some form of optimization or improving upon some existing work. So in all those cases, you need to still write like how everybody has written and just do an extension. So then once you do the methodology, you've done the work itself. Your results are the next, because the results are your observations. So that one too is quite easier to write because it's an unadulterated observations that you are giving here. So that is also quite simple. Then the next thing will be the discussion. Now, if you've done the literature review very well, then as like I've said, the discussion should be a bit easy for you, because then you know where to connect the dots, and then you can write the conclusions before you come to the introduction. And this is the reason why. The introduction is like it's introducing the work that you've done, literally introducing the work that you've done. Now, imagine that you write the introduction first, and then when you start your literature review and let's say your introduction says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Then once you start your literature review, you realize that the method you talked about
Yeah.
cannot be used because of this limitation.
And
Then you realize that the objective you even
connected.
stated that you are starting with,
Yeah, but
you can't get that because the
there's no
data you
like
need to get that
communication
is not
between
possible.
us. Any
So
again,
it's
I've
better to do
purchased
the
it
work,
by
and then now your introduction will introduce the work that you have done, not the work that you want to do.
I'm a Jewish.
I hope that is clear.
That's it.
So once you are
Yes,
done,
please.
you are done with the work, you've gotten the results, you've gotten the discussion, the main conclusion, then you can now tell me, this is the work I want to do. So it's like you are going retrospectively to go and tell me that this is the importance of this that I've done. This is the way it has been studied in the past in the field, but they've not done some part, and now I want to do that part, and this is how I'm going to tackle it. Then that is your introduction. So I hope that is clear. And once you are done with that introduction, then you can do an abstract. So because now you have a full work that you are doing, so you can summarize that work. And I've mentioned before, your abstract is a few lines that tell us the importance of what you are doing, the main objectives of your work, the methodology you used, the main findings, the conclusions, and you are done, and the recommendations, and you are done. So we don't expect too many words. In most journals, in your thesis, in other, you will just expect 250 words to 500 words for your thesis. So we don't expect any extraordinary thing. All right. Now, to look at a literature review, what can help you do a literature review? So I talk about reference managers here. So it's 2025. I don't expect anybody to be typing out references in your work. That is a no. Nobody is doing that anymore in the world. There are a lot of what you call reference managers. Reference managers help you to save first, to extract material online. Let's say you've gone to a journal article, you think this is something that is relevant to your work. You can extract the reference directly into the reference manager and store it there. Then once you are working in your Word document, and now the ones we have, you can embed them into your Word document. So once you are working in your Word document, you can actually connect that. Okay, there are different kinds of reference managers. The popular ones I've seen here usually are RefWorks, Zotero, and Mendeley. I use Zotero, and that one, if anyone is interested, you can pass around and I'll show you how it works. But you can go Google about reference managers and find out what they do. So that, for instance, if you are working in your Word document, you can just, once you've saved a reference in your database, all you have to do is to call that reference into your Word document. So I can cite everybody I need to cite. And usually for the new ones, Zotero, for instance, depending on even the journal you are working or the kind of referencing style. For instance, in KNUST, I think it's APA style or something, or either APA or Chicago. If that is the case, you can actually use that template for you. You just have to select that template and it will use that template for your work. And once you keep on embedding your references in, when you finish with your document, all you need to do is to create a reference section and it will call all the references that you have in your document. Of course, that's also helpful. It means that you don't miss a single reference that you've put in. If you are typing manually, you end up forgetting that yes. Yeah, sure. Thank you. So are you still there? Are you following me?
Yes,
Hello?
Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yes.
this is a time to start. Get a reference manager. This one, get one that you are comfortable with. I used to use Mendeley, then I didn't really like it, then I switched to Zotero. So any of you, choose any one that you think are good for you, and then you can work with that. All right. Then this is another website that I think you should be able to use. It's called Research Rabbit. You need to open an account with them, but it's free, so it's not a problem. What Research Rabbit does is that it can pull. We've talked about literature review. Research Rabbit can pull papers that are connected to whatever paper you put in. So if I have the DOI, which is the digital object identifier for a paper, usually if you see any journal article, you see that it has a DOI. If I pull the DOI or even the topic and I put it into Research Rabbit, right? What Research Rabbit will do using the power of AI is that it will look for any paper that is related to the paper that I've put in, and then create a network connected to all of these papers for me, which then makes it easy. I can even then pull them into my reference manager. So once I pull them into my reference manager, I would have kind of covered the whole field in terms of the topics in the papers that are available in my field. So that usually it limits your work. It makes your work easier in terms of when you are saying, okay, I'm doing. So for instance, if you are searching in Google Scholar, you find one paper, you don't know where this paper is relevant, you don't know where this paper is relevant. Research Rabbit can do that for you, because once you put in one topic, one paper, it searches the whole academic database, the database that are available to it, to give you all the papers that are related to that. So it's usually a good way to start your literature review, so that you can get access to a lot of papers. And once you get access to a lot of those papers, you can start reading from there. Maybe when you are reading and you find that, oh, there's actually a reference to another paper that is interesting, then you can go search for that one. That's a good way to start. Another one that does that very well is insightful.xyz. So again,
Yeah.
when I send this, you
Yeah.
can check out
You
those
look up.
websites. Or even if you are by a PC, you can check them out. Insightful.xyz does a similar thing like Research Rabbit, but usually it's more effective because it also does other cross-referencing, like the journals in which your papers are, the most important authors in your field, the top 10 papers, stuff like that. So the journals, and so it gives you more information in that case. So you can try that as well. And the other part is for instance, for I wanted to show something. Let me see. Yes. For instance, for this side, the right side, if you put two papers, what Insightful can do is to see whether there are any two papers from different fields. Insightful can find papers that connect those two fields for you, so that it helps you in finding cross-cutting references that can help you. And Insightful as well, you can pull the papers that you see in Insightful to your Zotero, which then can facilitate your reference manager, so you can facilitate your citing of those documents quite easily. And that is how it works. Now that I've given you that, somebody was asking what I mean by effective literature review. These are the things that I would expect that you get in an effective literature review. The keyword. So immediately you start, let's say the field is unknown to you. This is your first time looking at a field. If you do effective literature review, the things you pick up from the different papers, for instance, will be the keywords they use. If you are doing seismic interpretation with machine learning, I'll expect that you pick some particular words out, which will be key. Right? You are looking for inversion, petrophysical inversion. If it's machine learning, you get artificial neural networks, SVMs. You get maybe some random forest. You get all these kind of now, of course, currently you see a lot of deep learning
Hello.
papers. So you get that
Yes,
deep
madam.
learning word. So I want to see those kind of keywords. That's when you know you've done effective literature review.
Moving for
How are those words used in the papers?
maybe.
You should know that. That's an effective literature review. Second is that the methods used. What methods have been used? What algorithms have been used? How were they deployed? You should be able to get this from the literature review that you are doing. Third is the current and alternative understanding. The question is, for instance, a few years ago in seismic interpretation, it was purely based on the impedance relationship, the relationship between impedance and seismic data, and how to invert from impedance seismic to impedance. Then machine learning tools came in, and then everybody started using machine learning tools. For that one, we didn't need to understand the physics relationship because it's just finding any correlation using a machine learning algorithm. Then now, the new trend is that people are now embedding the physics-based algorithms that we left earlier into the machine learning algorithms, right? So the question you should always be asking yourself when you are doing literature review is, what is the current understanding? Is there an alternative understanding in the field? Is there an alternative theory? What is the today's theory and what is the alternative? And one example I give, for instance, is if you are studying climate change right now, there's a main theory that says that humans are responsible for climate change, right? It's not that they disprove the fact that maybe Earth itself has created some form of cycles that creates climate change. But the current understanding is that humans have been so heavily involved that we are causing climate change. Now, the alternative one that a lot of people hold, some people in the US and those who do not want to, the oil industry who do not want to believe that humans are the ones causing climate change, are that, oh, this is just a cycle. The Earth itself has its own climate change cycle. So we are just in one of those cycles. So of course, let's ignore it. You shouldn't do anything to reduce temperature or anything. We shouldn't do anything to reduce fossil burning or whatever. Let's just allow it to go. Yeah. So those are two understandings prevailing right now on climate change, and you should be able to do that for any field that you are doing. You should be able to even get more than one understanding of the field. That is where you know you've done effective literature review. The advantages and disadvantages of each of the methods that you are looking at, you should be able to tell us. The limitations and the challenges in the field. What are the limitations? A few years ago, or 10, 20 years ago, there was an understanding of the fact that we can use machine learning to do inversion and all those things. The only problem was that the limitation was computing power. So you couldn't do that. You could invert one line, one trace or something, but you couldn't invert 2D data. So the limitation was computing power, right? Now, with enough computing power around, we can do that without even thinking, blinking. So it's no longer a limitation. All right. Or the challenge will be that, oh, we don't really understand what attributes connect to something else. So you should be able to give that in any work that you are doing. Then another part that is important is the structure of the papers. How are the papers that you are reading structured? Because you see, that will help you when you are writing. What do they talk about first? When they talk about literature review, which are the main papers they talk about? How are those the methodology? How do they write about the methodology? Where do they write about the study area? How do they write about it? When they are writing in the results, how do they write? All that must be gleaned from the papers you are reading, and then you know you've done an effective literature review. And then, of course, the key papers in the field should also be things that you see. Once you've downloaded all this, you've done you are looking through these papers, you start getting what are the key papers in the field. If you use something like Insightful, of course, then it's easier for you to get those papers as well. All right. Then, of course, I've gone through the process of how you should do the writing project. I've gone through all of that. And then There's only one other thing. I've been very fast about this, but you can always ask questions. Walk to my office and ask questions. There's one thing I should add. So the thing I should add is that, of course, I know all of you are using AI tools already. So you um, I don't particularly say you should stop using them, but there's a reason I feel you can use them and it can be helpful. If you do the proper effective literature review, like I'm saying, you would have gotten a lot of, like, let's see how the introduction is structured, the kind of statements they've written, and you would have gotten some of those from old papers, like, oh, this is how they wrote the first line. So I'll make a note of that and put it down how they wrote that. I'll make a note of how they did the second one. What did they say in the third line? What did they say in the fourth line? You can write all that. But once you write that, maybe it's not really properly organized. It looks a bit haphazard, right? What an AI tool can help you with is to paraphrase that into something that sounds good. And the reason I say that is because I mentioned that just like the way when you talk anywhere, some people will know that you have an accent because you are from Ghana. If it's a Nigerian, everybody knows that they have a different accent. Usually when we write, we also have accents. There's this writing signature that we carry based on where you are educated. So if you're educated, for instance, in Ghana, the way you write your English will be slightly different from how somebody in Nigeria will write, and then how somebody in probably in UK or the US or something will write. So to clean that and make your writing a bit more effective, once you've made the notes that you want or the things that you write, you can just copy them and put them in the generative AI tool and ask to paraphrase or make it cleaner for you also. And that is how you use a generative AI. So that's the point I make with this. So to actually, because if not, then usually after, even if you've written and you are going to publish a paper, the reviewers will say, no, this doesn't sound formal. Not that it's not good, just that they feel that it doesn't look like the kind of English they write. It may not even mean that you are grammatically wrong. It's just that they are not comfortable with the way you've written. So for that one, I feel you can use the ChatGPT, for instance, or any generative AI to synthesize and paraphrase. Another way you could use is to generate ideas. So, for instance, you are starting your research work now. You've done a proper literature review. You know the area. You know the different areas. You know, but then you are wondering, how can I generate ideas that I will work on? That you can use. You can copy the notes that you've made, put in generative AI and say that, oh, ChatGPT, can you give me ideas I can research on in that field? That's an effective way of using a ChatGPT or any generative AI, rather than waiting and then saying, okay, they've given this is my topic, write my thesis for me within 5 minutes. Once for that one, everybody will see that what you are writing is wrong, especially because in the highly technical fields like geophysics, your write-up will be rubbish. You think it will make sense, but it wouldn't make sense. The generative AI tools are not good at working out the highly technical fields. They can do that in social science, but not in geophysics or material science or nuclear science. Okay, so I think that covers it. There's one more demo, but my time is up. I can do that. I can show you that some other time, maybe in one of our classes. I'll show you how that works. Good. So I think that covers everything. And I think it's been fast, but I hope you've covered something. The thing you need to do right now is go read some of the sites I've told you and see what I'm saying. And then pick a small topic of your own that you think you can research in, and then do some literature review just to practice. All this that I've said, if you don't practice, you won't get better at it. It takes lots of years of practice for you to get better at it. So just like any other thing in the world. So start practicing now. So that by the time you probably start your thesis, you are quite good at what you want and what you want to do. Good. Any questions? You have like 5 minutes for questions before you go. Any questions? No questions? That's good. It means that you guys were able to effectively take in what we've gone through today.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. All right. So if you have any questions, get back to me. Get back to me during the week or something. I'll put the slides in the group as well so that you can read. And then we can discuss in some of the classes we can discuss a bit on that as well to expand. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So, Prof, on behalf of the class, we want to thank you so much for this insightful presentation.
Well, thank you. I'm still doing doc, so you don't need to call me prof.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So thank you all. I have another meeting in this setup, so please log off so that I can continue with that.
Okay.
All right. So see you later.